the power of empowerment is so important.
You know what you've lived, and there's going to be a lot more people than you realize that will support you and believe you, and there's no shame in it.
There's a door somewhere that's going to get them out of that. And we sometimes need to help them find that door.
Thank you all for being here for Courage Over Comfort. It is a space that we are really hoping to dig deeper into the complexities of relationship violence and seek to understand what it takes to come forward with your story. We chose Courage Over Comfort because core is the Latin word for heart. And it really is, in the simplest form, the way to have courage is to be able to tell your story with your full heart. And it really is everybody here that creates that space for survivors of relationship violence to come forward and to be able to share their stories. Please join me in welcoming our guests this morning. I'd like to introduce our guests this morning, Gabby Blanchard, who is a longtime supporter of the organization, Human Options. She's been on our board of directors, is an amazing advocate, and helped us launch our Survivor Advisory Council. Thank you for being here with us today. And Chief Kent is with the Irvine Police Department. He's been an incredible partner, has been with the police department since your entire career, and has just been a tremendous support as we work with survivors of relationship violence in Irvine. And thank you for being here this morning. So I'm going to kick us off with the first question, and the question is for you, Chief Kent. What inspired you to do this work, and specifically working with survivors?
Thank you for the question, and first off, thank you for having me, and I just really want to salute Gabby for her courage. A lot of people will talk about police officers and firefighters being the heroes, but these are the true heroes right here, to be able to come out here and tell their stories. But what encouraged me was very unique. As a kid growing up in Irvine, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and it wasn't until I was stopped by an Irvine police officer, a motor officer, that really changed my perception of the police, my thoughts of the police. Being an immigrant myself, I just didn't know what to expect. I knew what the police was like where I came from, and we avoided them. But that interaction really changed my mind, and he still gave me the ticket. But he's a motor officer. But that ticket, I call it my golden ticket, the Willy Wonka chocolate factory ticket, because that took me to court, to community service, to YMCA. I saw Irvine Police Explorer flyer at the YMCA, which is a volunteer program for high school kids. I started volunteering at the police department, going on ride-alongs with the police officers, and really saw how the Irvine police officer interacted with the community. And I knew right then and there, this is what I wanted to do. And fast forward a little bit, when I joined officially and graduated the academy, one of the most impactful and powerful calls for service that I had was during training, was a domestic violence call. And seeing the fear, the confusion, the lack of trust, everything from the victim, and just completely closed off and didn't want to speak to us. And then watching my partner, my training officer, and how he was able to connect with her and open up and provide that top-notch level of service that is deserved. That really is a moment that I'll never forget. Never forget. And that was over 20 years ago, and it feels like it was just yesterday. And that's something that I constantly remind myself is there are so many people out there that depend on us, and we have to find ways of being able to connect with them, because it's not always that someone will call and ask for help. There has to be a different avenue. Maybe it's trust with the police. Maybe it's a neighbor calling, a friend, an advocate, someone that is willing to speak up and share their own story. And someone can say, on the receiving end, can say, like, I know there's a way out, and I know the police might be it.
Thank you for sharing that. I know, Gabby, you at one point had to make that courageous call. And so maybe walk us through what it took for you to make that first call.
Yeah, I think every survivor's story is going to be different and unique. For me, I had never told anyone about any abuse. I had never, a lot of times when we were having instances of physical violence, he would take my phone and keys, so there wasn't really opportunity to call the police, even if I could. But I didn't make that call until I had hit a point of, I cannot do this anymore. I had hit absolute rock bottom where I think that the fear of staying became so severe that the challenges and the fear of leaving that I knew I was going to face, that just became so much greater, that I ended up kind of breaking down, telling my mom and family first, waiting till he was at work, packing up the car, getting the kids things. They were only 9 months old. I have two 9-month-old twins. And then making that call to Santa Ana PD. I went to a hotel under a different name and left my phones behind because he was, power and control. I had 2 different phones. Made the call.
Walk us through a little bit what when you made that call, right? You've left, you are in a safer place than what you've been, and then tell us a little bit about what was that first call like? Who took it? A little bit more about what that experience was like for you, and any challenges that you faced, sort of even sharing your story for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was extremely difficult. I don't think the fear that it took to make that first step, this might sound disgusting, but I was throwing up. And I remember being really afraid. My ex is also a police officer. So I think there was some trepidation in making that call. Not just that, we were super invisible roles in ministry at our church and very high up. But I was scared, right? You don't know how police officers will react, or the support that I was going to get, or the fear of just even being believed, right? I didn't have bruises at the time. I didn't leave when there was an incident of violence. I actually left when I was okay, he's leaving for work. I had a little bit more of a sort of plan in place. But I could not have been, Santa Ana PD, Irvine, I'm sure they're very similar, but the compassion and love and understanding that I received from them was, it drastically set the trajectory of my healing on a certain course. I remember just bawling, and my story didn't even, it was so sporadic, because I'm and then this time he was had me by the throat, and then and I'm 8 years, right, of instances that I'm throwing on them, and they're okay, and they're writing it all down. And I'll never forget, I remember one of the seasoned officers pulled me aside, because I had shared, I'm a strong Christian. And so there's always been this dynamic of wanting to forgive, and also you love the person. And I remember he pulled me aside and he was you know what? I'm a Christian too. And he's and God would never want you to be in a marriage like this. That's not God's heart for you. And we believe you, right? And that was when I first got the card for human options. And, from there, again, obviously I got an emergency protective order and things like that. But when you have a police officer or somebody in the community for the first time, my biggest fear, and he had told me, no one's going to believe you. Mm-hmm. You think they're going to believe you? He was very Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. If anybody in this room met him on the street, they'd be he's the nicest guy ever. But to have him say, no, we believe you, and this is not how you're supposed to be treated. And it really meant the world to me. And then it got me connected with Human Options, which then kind of propelled me in my next phase of healing and getting the support that I really, really needed.
Yeah, that two sides of him, that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, is something we hear a lot about. And it must be difficult for police officers on a call to be able to tell who they're dealing with and exactly what happened. Chief, what type of training do your officers go through to kind of deepen that understanding?
There are numerous trainings that we go to, and it starts in the academy. It continues on in the field training program, and obviously there's an annual certification that we have to go to. There's additional specialized classes that we send our folks to, especially our detectives that work crimes against persons. But for the first person that responds is a patrol officer, and I think that the best training, for me at least, you can send them to the classes, you can have them go through a variety of different readings and trainings or whatever it may be, but the best training is dealing with real life people and hearing the stories. And it's challenging. It's a very challenging type of call to handle. because it's rare where you have something that is clear cut. You know, you show up and you have one person that is injured and the other one standing there and says, "Yeah, I did that," and for us to say, "Okay, then let's do what we need to do and move on." It's rarely like that. Sometimes it's this person said this and that person said that, and you're trying to figure out. And to your point, you might not have obvious bruises or other signs, but we still have to make a decision on what is best. I became a police officer, not too long after the OJ trials, and how that obviously transformed the domestic violence world. Back then, it was like, all right, guys, knock it off. Let's try to get along. You sleep in this room, you sleep in that room, and the police officers would walk away. And it's really changed. But showing up to the scenes, asking the right questions, take your time. Take your time. That's what we tell our folks. Take your time. Be genuine. Because if they feel like you're another routine call for service, people are going to shut down. No one's going to talk to you. You're not a routine call for service. This is a decision that's going to change that person's life forever. Just like the Santa Ana police officer that pulled her aside and said, "I believe you." It sounds like there was a lot going obviously through your mind when you're saying, "Oh, and this one time and this other time," because it's 8 years of just nonstop abuse. And for some people, it's less. For some people, it's way more. And they're trying to get it all out. And trying to decipher all that and make sense of what happened, but making sure you're making the best decisions. Sometimes you walk away without a crime, but there's something happening. And the importance of documenting it, the absolute importance of, you might not have a criminal report, but you have an incident that occurred. Put it in an incident report. And I'll share a quick story of how that was very impactful for me. As a brand new police officer, I was off training, I was working graveyards. I respond to this apartment for a domestic violence call. They didn't call, it was a neighbor. A neighbor called, the guy opens the door, sweaty, wouldn't let us in. We forced our way into the house, try to separate. She would not say a word, just completely shut down. No signs of abuse as far as injuries. House looked fine. But we just knew something's happening. She would not open up. She would not open up to us. And I tried so hard. We were there for, at least a couple of hours. Trying to talk to him. He wouldn't share anything, telling us to leave. We obviously took our time, did the investigation. Well, I still took an incident report. A couple of months after that, he ended up killing her.
Oh my gosh.
And they actually used that to pursue the death penalty on him, showing the pattern of there's been things going on with this person. So, and that's why we tell our folks it's the trainings are good, the classes are good, but real life experience, that's where you're truly gaining the expertise of how to talk to a potential victim, how to talk to a suspect, how do you get them to open up. And so many times children are involved. The children are witnesses to some of these incidents. How do you pull them aside and try to get something out of them? Here you have police officers with all this stuff, radios going off, and crazy yelling and trauma and things broken in the house. And here you're sitting down a 10-year-old little boy or girl and trying to ask them what happened between mommy and daddy. I mean, it's a very challenging call, but it's one of those that it is absolutely important that we continually invest in our personnel from a training standpoint and also real life experience.
And go ahead.
If I could jump in there, I have so much compassion, especially on this side of it, for police officers in your position, even friends and family members of people who are in an abusive relationship, because, and we kind of discussed this the other day, but it's like when you're in the situation, it's like you don't want, there's part of you, you're experiencing this abuse, right? But you're trying to reconcile what you're experiencing in that moment of let's say a big event with the person that you're, making pancakes with on Sunday morning and dancing around the house with your kids to music, and you love that person. And it's like you don't want them to experience consequences, right? You want that abuse to stop, but you're also not out to get this person. You love them. You just want them to change so you guys can keep this happy family. But it can be very hard. I know for my family, hearing it from officers when you're looking at someone who is in a really dangerous situation and they are not wanting to tell you, what's going on, or not really seemingly not wanting your help, right? And that can be really, really hard. And I know for people who haven't lived the experience, it can be kind of frustrating. Like, well, why is she staying? And why, but it's so complex. And so to have compassion from officers and from people, and that's why I'm so passionate about education, because I know that it's hard to understand, and it takes so much for a woman to actually leave.
Yeah. Let's unpack the complexity a little bit, Gabby, because you've talked quite a bit about even when the abuse was happening for you, trying to figure out, like, is this abuse? Is this not? And sort of the messages that you were getting, like you were sort of picking up on the messages he was giving family. It's just sort of, let's unpack that just a little bit. Like, when would you say is the first time you realized that maybe something was wrong? Or maybe just a little like, I don't know if this is okay.
Absolutely. And it's true. Right before I left, probably a month before I did, I was literally, and this sounds silly, I'm a very intelligent woman, I promise, but I was Googling like quizzes, like, am I being abused? Like, is this abuse? Because there was power and control in every aspect of our marriage. The times where I knew it was abuse, I remember very clearly the first time that he got physical with me, and it was like shook me. We were on our way to an engagement party. We had just gotten engaged, and I had said something. He pulled over the car, got out, covered my mouth, kind of slammed my head back into the seat, was screaming in my face. And then it was like, I'm crying. My family's waiting for us to go celebrate our engagement. And I'm like wiping my makeup off, and and then it's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I blew it. I love you. All these things, and just trying to grapple with that. And I did try to break it off, actually. After like our engagement, we took some time off, but there was some stalking, and I ended up giving in, getting married 3 months later very quickly. But I think that honestly, there's so many women who don't experience physical abuse, and I have so much compassion for those women, because it's so much harder to identify the things that grounded me to make me know, like, 100% in these moments, this is crossed the line of abuse. Like, had me pinned by the throat, and times slapped me across the face. Like, I knew that was abuse. But also him being an officer too, he's like, you think this is abuse? Like, that's a joke. You don't even know what that word is. Actually, that's a trigger for me. We're not allowed to say that word in this house. And I'm like, what? I'm like, am I crazy, right? And then getting into the PEP program at Human Options, also, I think that was the moment too where I realized, oh my gosh, okay, almost every aspect of my life abuse was occurring. Like, he had taken my credit cards. The financial abuse was really intense. I didn't have a car that last year but it was, again, under the guise of, hey, you're a stay-at-home mom now. I'll use the car to drop me off at work. You can pick me up with the boys. You'll have the car. Like, we need to do this financially for our family. And so I'm like, okay, yes. Like, I'm a team player, whatever we need to do. If financially we can't afford it. So when things are framed in a certain way by someone who's really good at gaslighting, making you feel like you're the crazy one, and then you're having all these happy moments mixed in, and there's manipulation, it's really hard to identify what's abuse, what's the power and control, and what's just normal relationship dynamics. And it just can make it really hard to identify. And that's not even getting into the challenges of, once you identify it, how you actually leave.
Yeah. And Chief, we talked a little bit about that pattern, and we actually sort of turned to our advisory council and asked them, like, what questions would you want us to ask the chief? And one of the questions was really around understanding that not everything rises to the level of a crime. So it's not legislated as a crime, but it is something that is sort of setting up that cycle of power and control. And just sort of, what do you do in those moments where something's happening, some stalking's happening, maybe some control issues, maybe it's gotten very scary emotionally and psychologically, but it doesn't quite cross that threshold. So maybe walk us through what you would want them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is probably one of the more common things that we see. Physical violence is definitely there, but there's so many other types of abuse, as Gabby just mentioned. And I think the thing that stands out the most to us, I can't tell you how many victims because even if it's not criminal, I still think they're victims. That would sit back and tell you, I thought that's part of being married. I thought that's part of being in a relationship. I thought that's normal. Isn't it normal? No, it's not. It's not normal to treat another human being, especially your significant other, like that. Respect is the number one thing. Care, compassion, having control, power. I mean, this is 2025. For anybody in any relationship to have that kind of influence over someone else, I'm telling you right now, it's wrong. And what I would tell them is speak up, talk to someone, a best friend, a brother, a sister, a parent, a neighbor, a pastor. I don't care. Just tell someone, because I guarantee you that the person on the receiving end will tell them, like, no, that is not normal. That is not okay. And there's a lot of folks that I've talked to that say, I wish I would have spoken up a little sooner, a little bit sooner, and how much that could have changed their life. And it's, you go the honeymoon phase and a dating thing, everything's great, and you slowly, it's like a little comment here and there, a little action, and then you gradually see it. I mean, it's rare from day one where someone is in some sort of an abusive relationship. Oh, yeah, this person seems nice, I'm going to stay with them. It's a gradual. It's kind of like boiling the frog. Like, you don't realize what is happening, but if it takes you a second to think, is this normal? Speak up and ask. That is, I think, the most important thing. And for us, for obviously our partners, the power of empowerment is so important, to empower people to speak up and share their story.
Gabby, I know something that you said resonated with you, so what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. And it is so hard to speak up, right? Like, and I don't think it can be hard for people to understand that piece. And there is fear. Like, I mean, I did have people who didn't believe me. Like my pastor, I had another pastor that totally did support me, but it crushed me, right? And like, it absolutely, I was like, I knew he was right. Nobody was going to believe me. I didn't get the support right off the bat from certain circles. But I will say, like, it's hard to get to the point where you even want to share with somebody. And I would encourage you, yes, have one trusted friend, right, that you can share and say, like, is this normal too? But even then, it's like a lot of times you're not ready to leave until you're ready to leave, which is really hard pill to swallow because you love the person. And so I think if I were to speak to someone who's in the situation right now, I first would want to say, you are incredibly strong. And we understand that you're doing everything you can to survive and to protect your children and yourself. And sometimes that can look like staying right now, which is not what, we want. We obviously want you to get out, right? We don't want you to be, but, when you are ready, and we hope that it's sooner rather than later, there is a community of people, whether it be your police officers, places like Human Options that can come around you and support you. Like a lot of times women, most of the time, I'll speak from women because I am a woman, you're thinking about your children's lives too. Like, where am I going to go with my kids right now to get away? Like, I'm going to take them from their rooms. Like, that's extremely traumatic. Then he's going to battle me in court to keep them away from me. What am I going to do financially? Like, if there has been that level of control, these are all the things that you're thinking about when you're in the relationship, that even if I know I don't deserve to be treated like this, I'm absolutely miserable. But this I can understand and somewhat control while I'm here, and I can keep the peace and do whatever I can to protect my kids. Whereas the idea of leaving is like, well, now what am I going to, now I know he's going to be coming after me like never before. It's the most dangerous time in a relationship is when you try to leave. And not only that, now he's going to use the kids against me. Who knows how he's going to abuse or treat the kids? Where am I going to live? How am I financially going to do this? I mean, those are things that are terrifying for someone who's in an abusive relationship. And it's a massive, massive life change. So, I don't know if that...
Yeah, I think... what you're sharing is really important, and I think it sheds really that light on just the layers of fear and the layers of complexity, right, around if this happens, then this is going to happen. So you're always kind of thinking about like the bigger picture and all the pieces. And often we hear from survivors that like when we hear from them, it's they know everything that's coming. It's they know the good side, and then they know if I do this is going to trigger that, and this is how it's going to impact them. And so there's a lot of that happens. And I think it's really, as Chief, you've talked about this too, it's like the unpacking of like something's off here, but she's not sharing, or something's off, but the kids aren't sharing either. And so it's that entire piece of like, they've been trained not to talk because they know what happens when you talk, and or they've been, you know what's going to happen if there's some repercussion for the abuser at that moment, right? It's like it's going to come back to you.
And if I may,
Yeah.
I think the speaking up part of it also, it doesn't just apply to the person that's in that relationship. We all have siblings, we have best friends, we know what they're like, and we know when something's off.
Yeah.
We need to also pay attention. And also, folks, whether it's a pastor or I don't know, a teacher or a coworker, someone that knows the other person so well, and you can tell like, hey, this person's not acting like themselves. Hey, are you doing okay? Yeah, everything's fine. And it might take several conversations until they open up. They might never open up to you, but at least try, because there might be that window that you can be an anonymous caller. I can't tell you how many times we've had that, where people call anonymously. You don't need to give us your information. Hey, 123 Main Street, I think there's something going on over there. Okay, we'll go check it out. It never hurts, because they will never know. They will never know. Now, it might make it obviously a little bit more complicated what happens in the house with the dynamics in there by us showing up. But at the same time, if it gives us an opportunity to save someone, we want that opportunity.
Yeah. Could we talk a little bit, Chief, about, Gabby shares sort of how Santa Ana Police Department connected her to Human Options and other community resources. Let's talk a little bit about the resources that your officers have and how they connect to community partners to help survivors.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the things that Gabby was talking about is the fear of what's next. Where am I going to stay? Where am I? I need clothes. I need my children need clothes. We need food. I need a cell phone. I got to live. A car, whatever it may be. And there are, the amount of resources out there are just absolutely impressive, beyond impressive. I mean, obviously, Human Options has been one of our biggest partners for decades. But being able to let them know that it's going to be fine. It's not great, but it's going to be fine. And making sure you're connecting them with the right person in a timely fashion, because if you have a lot of distance between the time they're taken out of the house to what happens, it just feeds into that fear of what's going to come next. And I've seen at times where victims will recant. And, it wasn't really like that. It wasn't that bad. No, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. And next thing you know, they're back in the house. And the cycle continues. It might be fine for a few weeks, a few months. It always comes back. So community partners, community relationships, everything from shelters to hospitals to different foundations that are out there to support. It's really important that they know that they're not alone. They're not alone, and that we're going to be there with them. We have a victim advocate that we have, a couple of them at our station. All they do is they get police reports from what happened overnight, what happened yesterday. They start making calls, and it's not just domestic violence. It's victims of certain types of crimes, but certainly domestic violence, sexual assault, whatever it is. And hi, I'm just calling to see what else you need. I know you were connected with XYZ resource last night, but what else do you need? What else can? Okay, this is my number. This is my cell phone. It's on 24/7. Give us a call. And I think it's those types of resources that obviously they help, but more importantly, it lets the person on the receiving end know that they're not alone in this fight.
Mm-hmm. And Gabby, you've talked about the personal empowerment program. Maybe share like something that you learned through that program that helped you really sort of think, okay, like I made the right choice.
Yes, definitely. Well, honestly, it was probably the most healing thing that I went through after leaving my abusive relationship. And knowledge is power, right? And so for me, living in such a gray space of trying to like I even had moments where I questioned myself afterward, like, was I just blowing this out of proportion? Like maybe it wasn't so bad. But even going through the PEP, it was like I learned about things like disassociation for survival. Like it's actually a mental thing that happens to us where we disassociate from our reality just to survive. So we do downplay it, because if our brain had to say, like, recognize what you're really in and face that fear, it's too much. There were things like, just the emotional, financial. I remember going through each week, you have a different piece of abuse, but then also, like, even at the very end is like, okay, so let's say they, you're thinking about going back. And it's like, there's a whole list of, they have to say, like, what they did to you, how it affected you, take complete ownership. And it's like this whole long list, right? And at the very end, I'll never forget this, it says, and then also understand that it's probably going to be a lifelong struggle for that person to battle against being that abusive person. It was massively empowering. And then also just to sit around this room with other women or even men who've experienced it and to feel not so alone. Like I remember, because there's so much misplaced shame that you're being abused, right? Like it's so embarrassing, right? Like I think my view of myself was like, I'm just weak. And then obviously, like, the public, perception is also that too sometimes. And so you start to believe, like, I am weak. Like, I can't believe I let this happen to me. And why did I stay? And like my kids, like, how did I put my kids in this situation? You're just absolutely wrecked. Then to look around the room and be like, wow, this is like something that happens to 1 in 3 women in their lifetime. I mean, so many people have experienced it. No one wants to talk about it because of that shame. But going through the empowerment program, I was able to realize, like, listen, it wasn't my fault. Like I was doing everything that I needed to survive, and nobody goes into the relationship thinking they're going to be abused. To his point, it never starts out that way. So when people are like, well, why would she even be with him? Well, it didn't start that way. We were in love. I was like amazing. And throughout the whole relationship, we had super happy, incredible moments where you feel like you get to see their true heart, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, that's who they really are inside, is like that good version that you're just waiting to see again. But that does not excuse the abuse. I remember too, just my last point, sitting down, because I also got free counseling for a year through Human Options, and I had a really gnarly court battle. And so it was really just helping me cope. I was unpacking so much trauma, years of trauma. And I remember looking at the therapist going, do you think he was like horribly abused as a child? And this is why. And she stopped me there and she was like, why do you want to know? Like, why do you think that that's so important for you to understand? I'm like, well, that it would like help me make sense of how he could treat me like that. And she was like, let's put that aside. She's like, because you've had childhood trauma, but you don't harm, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, regardless of our childhood trauma, it is a choice whether we continue to hurt others. And so all that to say, Human Options, like going through PEP, getting empowered, understanding the dynamics really freed me. It empowered me to be like, that's why I did this. That's why I acted this way. This is why, and then gave me kind of the courage to re-find my voice and my person and rebuild a life for me and the boys free from fear.
Yeah. And you talk about that shame. I think domestic violence very much is that one crime where the victim is responsible, or right, that and sexual assault, where we blame the victim as a society and wonder, like, well, why does she stay? If it was that bad, she would be in that relationship. What did she do to cause him to get there? He's a perfectly happy, like, go-lucky guy. Same with sexual assault. Why did she wear that? And so this is one of those crimes where it is very much about, there must be something wrong with the victim, instead of really thinking about, like, well, why don't we ask why they harm, right? Why don't we ask that? And I think to your point, too, is that piece around trauma is not everybody who has experienced trauma goes out and causes harm, right? That there are ways to work through it, and we definitely encourage that that help and that support. And Chief, you said something about as people come forward, I think that sometimes they'll go back, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Is that I think Gabby, you've shared that there were maybe some times when you let people know like a little bit of your story, and statistically they say it takes 7 times for victims of relationship violence to leave. And I think we want to kind of unpack that a little bit, because it's maybe not 7 times to leave, but maybe 7 times to be able to tell your story in a way that people feel like they can believe it and understand it. And so you've talked a little bit about this. Share a little bit about that experience for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I did try to leave after I was engaged without physical. There were some things that had happened even while we were engaged. And I think it's so hard. Let's not talk about what they're facing by leaving once they're already in it. But when when you really love the person, just that alone is like you're hoping that every time that they apologize that they really mean it and that they're going to change. And then you're like another layer on top of it. We've all experienced breakups in this room and the heartbreak of what it's like to go through that, but add trauma bonds on top of that, which it's almost like, and I learned this through Human Options, it's almost like an addict. Like when you're in that cycle, it's the same chemicals released in your brain like people who are using drugs. So it's almost like severing that relationship. Not only are you afraid, not only are you facing potential homelessness and your kids going through this trauma and ending up in a shelter, you're also experiencing almost like a withdrawal from an addictive, super toxic cycle. So there's so many pieces that make it hard to actually leave. And I was talking to a woman who was a dear friend from years ago that is finally leaving her abusive partner. And she's still going through court as he's dragging her through the mud. She's like, did I make a mistake? Like, am I doing the right thing here? Like, I miss those good moments. And now our girls are experiencing this. And there's just confusion. And is it even worth all of this? And I'm like, yes, it is. Trust me. Stay the course. Ground yourself. Make that list, which they encourage at Human Options, of everything that they've done wrong to you. And for me, as a Christian, it's like, love keeps no record of wrongs. We're keeping the record, guys, okay? Write it all down on a list and keep it in your pocket. Keep it in your phone, in your purse. And when you have those moments of doubt, you pull that out and you go, he strangled me. He controlled this. He put me down constantly. I was never at peace. I was never happy. Whatever those things are, keep that thing in your purse or wherever, because it is so hard to finally cut the cord and walk away. And that's why I said it almost takes things becoming, unfortunately, so dire that you don't have a choice. Or like, I have another woman who we're helping, I think, at Human Options, who her child called the police, right? Because he had gotten to the point of taking a knife out. And sometimes it almost takes something like that to wake you up, where it's like, well, I could lose my children, right? Like this is now out of my control and it's affecting my kids. And so here it is, like whatever it takes, it's gotta end.
Yeah. I know, Chief, we've talked a lot about kids. We've talked about them on calls, and we've talked, and Gabby, you've obviously shared that when you made the decision to get out of the relationship and were able to take that step, your boys were 9 months old. That's got to be pretty difficult for children when this abuse is happening, there's violence occurring, like heightened anger, yelling, sometimes throwing objects, and then the police show up, and all of a sudden, right, the family is not the same. What are some things that you as law enforcement do to support the children through this process as well, and maybe reconnect and sort of show them that there's different sides, I guess, to law enforcement?
I think it's a great question, because it also depends. I'll get to as far as what we do, but the one thing I wanted to touch on earlier, it really depends on the type of officer that responds. So if you have a 25-year-old police officer that doesn't have children, that is not in maybe a serious or a committed relationship, it's hard for someone like that to understand the dynamics of what's happening in a house versus someone that's, older. I'm not going to go into age universe here, but let's just say older, wiser, in a relationship, maybe has children and can relate more. And I think that's part of the challenges that we have, is how do you get that 25-year-old police officer to kind of have an understanding of what that dynamic is. But dealing specifically with children, we have stickers, we have stuffed animals, we have all kinds of stuff we keep in the back of our cars. And sometimes it's not just about two officers, one's dealing with this person, the other's dealing with that person. It's about having a third or fourth officer on scene, and their sole job is to entertain the kids. I've done it. We've all done it where, hey, you're in the room, you're looking around. Oh, you play this sport. I played that sport. Or do you have, what's your favorite video game? And they just has nothing to do with what's going on over there. And if the opportunity presents, but what we're doing is we're scanning, right? We're looking for signs of abuse. We're looking for signs of trauma. We're trying to connect with them, see if they're willingly going to open up and share some information that might help us get them out of a very toxic situation. But the children, it's truly heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking because they don't know any better. And they're, why is the police here? What's wrong with mommy and daddy? I will never forget this incident. I was working a recruitment fair once, and this little kid comes up to me and I give him a sticker. Hey, buddy, high five, this and that. It's like, I remember you. You arrested my dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was blown away. I didn't know for what.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize him, but the mom walked up, and then I recognized her, and I was devastated that this little child told me that, and she saw that, but she gave me a hug, and it totally changed me. And how are you doing? How are things? Oh, good. He's so much happier. I'm seeing a different side of him. So, as Gabby was talking about, it's so hard when you have children in the mix, and especially for us showing up as something just happened, trying to make sense out of the chaos that just happened and everything that has been happening for months or years, and trying to of course you want to take care of the adults that are involved in this, but the children are suffering on a different level. Yeah. And the last thing we would want them to know, or feel, I should say, is that this is okay, right? We talked about childhood trauma and this and that. Sometimes we do have those conversations with them if it comes up organically. Like, well, sometimes things happen. Sometimes adults have arguments, but it's not okay to whatever it is, right? And then we'll try to bring up examples of just like when you have a friend, it's not okay to talk to them in this certain way. And if you have a neighbor, it's not okay to. So not necessarily to make it look like your mom and dad have are the problem.
Yeah.
It's just the acceptance of what you can say and how you can talk to people. But it is definitely challenging when you have children in the mix.
And what a way or an opportunity to really model that positive communication, and the way to really tell people this is, again, that message of this is not okay. You don't have to tolerate this, and we're here to help you and support you, which is, I think, what most survivors are really looking for, is that opportunity to share their story and the opportunity to take a breath. I mean, we started this with the story that you shared, Gabby, around all the chaos, and now for the first time I get to tell eight years of everything, and so you're trying to get it out as quickly as possible, but having someone who is willing to listen, to sort of be responsive is key to taking that next step, whether that is calling for help, whether that is leaving. I think it's important to know that it's a step. It's not necessarily like the end of your journey, but it's the beginning of something that has changed, and the healing takes time. I think you've really referred to that quite often, about this is a series of steps and a series of opportunities, and then you're reminding yourself of what happened throughout that.
Yeah, definitely. And I would encourage too, because as I'm sitting here, right, hearing about that incident, I'm tearing up. And that was one of the hardest things with PEP for me, was going through the effects it has on your children. That was a whole 2-hour session on its own. And I think there's so much guilt, honestly, for the women that are in it, of when you are in it, but then also especially when you get out of my kids have experienced all of that. And I just want to be a voice of compassion too, that none of us want our kids to experience pain or suffering. But it's not the end of their story either, and it doesn't have to be the end of yours. And just like there's healing for you, there's healing for your kids. And so like we offer counseling for kids, and the beauty and the strength that they're going to see once they grow up. And one of our friends here who's sitting in the audience like, experienced that being on the other end as a child. Like I think that one day your kids are going to look at you and be like, Mom, thank you for getting us out of that. And we love you, and be able to look at that and see the strength that it took you to leave. And so there's hope for your kids too. Because I remember being like, I can't believe that's their dad. And how, just dealing in therapy with like all of the guilt that this is their dad. This is who I picked. But yes, there's hope and healing for you. And there is so much hope and healing for your kids.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And real quick, and it starts by us showing up in the house. And I want to share this real quick because I hired on a police officer. This is probably about 3 years ago, but he's an Irvine resident, grew up in Irvine. Such a powerful story. What made you want to become a police officer? Well, my parents, this, that, domestic violence. You guys came to our house, and named the officer who still works for us.
Oh, wow.
And how that officer treated him and treated everybody, and now they're partners.
Wow.
So, like that's the impact you have, and it starts from that moment. From that moment, and that's something that's so important to tell our folks, that 25-year-old cop or the older cop, about how important it is and how you talk to people. That genuine care, compassion. If they don't feel that, they're going to shut down. They will not open up to you. So, just wanted to share.
Thank you. And that's such a great note to transition on, because that is important. And every single person who has the opportunity to hear a story and the opportunity to be there for someone who is experiencing violence, like that's what people remember, is like, oh, like he told me no one would ever care, and look at this person cares, they see me, they're not blaming me. And we all have the power to be that person, and we all have the power to be compassionate in that way. I know our audience has been incredibly just engaging and really happy to have you here. And I want to turn to the audience and see if there's any questions that you all would like to ask.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. Chief, I have a question for you. Can you tell me your perspective on the importance of having female officers on cases like this?
That's a great question. So, I think male, female, but also background and nationality are really important when it comes to how you interact with folks that are going through these types of traumatic incidents. It is not uncommon for us to offer, would you feel more comfortable if it was even if we don't ask, if we can tell, we'll ask for a female police officer to come and try to communicate with them. Sometimes you'll have folks that will open up to you, and it's fine. It doesn't matter if you're male or female, but you'll have it sometimes where they completely shut down and they don't want to share anything. And kind of our last ditch effort is, hey, can we have a female police officer and come here and try to connect? And sometimes that works, not all the time, but it definitely helps. It definitely helps. But we also offer that. Hey, would you feel more comfortable to talk to a female police officer? Our city is very diverse. Irvine is very diverse. We have over 100 different countries that are represented in Irvine, over 70 languages, over 20 different faiths. So we try really hard to hire within that demographic to make sure that if an officer was to walk in a house and they're from a similar background or a similar culture, that helps open up that conversation just a little bit more. Or similar faith, whatever it may be. So for us, we truly try to make every effort in ensuring that we have the right people in place, the right people responding to these types of calls for service, especially if it's something, whether it's domestic violence or sexual assault and things like that. We and having an idea of what happened. We might get the initial information up front and say, you know what, this is probably more suited for a female officer to go talk to this victim, or a male officer, or someone that speaks whatever language, Mandarin, Farsi. That is probably what's really helpful in trying to connect.
My question is for Gabby. You've given such great advice throughout this entire conversation. If you had the chance to speak to a victim right now, what would you say is the best piece of advice you could give them?
That's someone who's still in it. Okay, yes. I think my best piece of advice would be, it would be to ask themselves if your daughter or your sister or somebody that you really loved was in the relationship you're in, what advice would you give them? Would you want them to stay? Because sometimes we need to come to the realization ourselves. And a lot of times when you're in that relationship, you don't think, like, you would never want someone else that you love to experience it. For you, it's fine. You can manage it. But if you were to think about your daughter or somebody that you loved in the relationship you're in, would you stay? And then I would say safety plan, right? Like if you're in imminent danger, get out. I mean, you are in danger, but if you're able to safety plan and take steps and confide in somebody, whether it be through law enforcement or human options, safety plan. Put steps in order behind the scenes so that when you do leave, you're safe. And then also, I would just encourage them that they're not alone, that this is something that many women have walked before them, and that there is so much hope. There is a life that they can't even envision that is available to them if they start taking these steps to get out. Like, had you told me, I remember breaking down at Human Options, like, how am I going to provide in Orange County? I have no degree. I've never worked a corporate job. Like, I just don't even know what I'm going to do. And now here I am. I have a great condo in Irvine. I have the best life. Like, somehow God opened the door for me to get this wonderful job. I couldn't have even conceived of how happy I am right now and how amazing life is for me and my boys. And yes, it was, that first 2 years was absolute hell. Like, it was horrible. I'm talking broken beyond repair, but worth it to experience what I have now. Just no fear. My home is full of peace, joy, and that you can do that. The strength that has kept you alive and surviving in the relationship is the strength that will carry you through as you rebuild.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, I mean, thank you for sharing. I'm going to tear up. But, bizarre. Advice for, like, teenagers ahead of time. Just thinking about my daughters, you just made me totally. But, like, what should they watch out for as they're young? And I think you guys do a lot of education of, like, what should we teach our kids, knowing that 1 in 3 women go through this? Like, what should they watch out for in relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question, because I wish, like, that was something that I wished that was more educated, because I knew, like, my mom had told me, like, no one's ever allowed to lay a hand on you. And that's, by the time that happens, you're so deep in it. Mm-hmm. I would say watch out for, like you kind of touched on it, little ways of manipulation and control, like, and also love bombing in the beginning. Like, when someone wants to take it so far so fast, mm-hmm. that's not actually healthy. Like, I remember my first date, he pretty much was like, God told me I'm going to marry you. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's in love with me. Right? And like, showed up with gifts. And like, I think a month in was like, I'm in love with you. And I was like, whoa, like, this is crazy. 6 months later, we're engaged. So that kind of fastness. And then looking back, because I've dissected everything now, looking back, I remember I was at a Bible college and we had an ice cream social, like nothing even crazy. But I wore a dress, and then we posted photos of it online, and he called me and he was like, I want to talk to you about something. I was shocked. Honestly, Gabby, like, you're this godly woman, or you are acting like it, but your dress, like, it just totally misrepresented who I thought you were. And I was like, what? Like, did I look inappropriate? Like, I started questioning, did I look inappropriate? It broke me down to the point where I went to the dean of women at our college and apologized for my dress, right? So there's these little areas where you start to string through the control where it's very manipulative. But yeah, I mean, trying to isolate you from your friends and your family. If he needs to know where you are at all times of the day, starts putting restrictions on, like, well, I don't like when you do that, or I don't like when you do this. Those are things to keep in mind. No one should be telling you how to dress, where to go, who to hang out with, how to spend your money or your time, any sort of aspect of that control. If you bring up something that's bothering you in the relationship, how does he respond? Is it, okay, I didn't see that, but I'm sorry it hurt you and I want to understand and let's be better. That's a green flag. Red flag is, what are you talking about? Like, you're crazy. That's nuts. You're so sensitive. You know, those little things in the beginning of the relationship when you're trying to bring up issues or things that bother you are a huge tell.
Yeah. I think the other thing I just sort of want to add here is that we often think about the opportunity to intervene with teens and younger children as intervening when it's like when you start dating, when you have a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex, and actually when it actually starts sooner than that, right? It's really about, you know, girlfriends and your peers and how those relationships manifest themselves and what the conversation looks like in that. And so it actually really starts much younger. I mean, we hear from our educators often that like, children at like 11 and 10 have been real challenges in how to navigate these relationships. And sometimes they're dating at 10 or 11. But, you know, and working with young girls, what we hear is like, well, I just want to know how to talk to like my friend Sarah, who like is treating me this way. And so it's those opportunities to really talk and listen to like, let's unpack this. And I'm sorry it hurt you. And like, how are you going to go back and talk to Sarah about that? And I think there's so much attention to like things that you know, when you get older, you realize they're not that important. But in your teen years, when it's on social media and there's all these different ways that you could be hurt and criticized, and that's really challenging. And so I think we also just need to remember that primary relationships are oftentimes with their peers and their parents. And, you know, I often catch myself, you know, when you do this work and you're trying to parent, it's a little more challenging because you know all the things you shouldn't be saying and that you're doing wrong. And I think there's also that realization that like sometimes it's just about like going back and saying, I'm so sorry I said that, and, or like I didn't handle that in the best way. And so, you know, I think some of it is being really aware that today our kids have access to so much information, very extremely knowledgeable. I mean, my daughter is like a mini psychologist, right? She just knows so much because she gets it on social media, and what you know technically and how you experience it in life still has to be connected, and we're the best people to do that. Yeah.
I'll add one last thing
Yeah.
too. The books and the movies too that influence like what love should look like, and it's the fighting and the passion and the excitement. It's like we kind of get this thing thrown at us like from a young age of like, well, that's what love is like, you know. And it's like that also being able to talk through, hey, like that mimics, maybe like brings up extreme feelings, but that's not love.
Yeah. Chief.
That's such a spot on point with the movies.
Mm-hmm.
I have two little girls. They're little, 8 and 4. But we were watching a cartoon the other day where boy girl were a little physical with each other, and I'm watching my girls watch that, and I say, hey, you know, this is a cartoon. This is not real life. That's not okay. You know, it's not okay to hurt anybody, and not necessarily making it about a dating thing, but it's not okay to hurt anybody. It's not okay to let anybody say anything that is mean to you. So trying to have those conversations early on. I mean, I think it helps that their dad's a police officer that's going to kind of watch them like a hawk, but it's so true. What's out there, what's cool, what's nice, what's hip, social media, cartoons, movies. I mean, it's that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem that's out there, that, you know, for people to have that level of acceptance, like, oh, this is what it's like.
Yeah.
No, that's not what it's like.
Yeah, it's really helping normalize what's real and not real. I think thank you all for your wonderful questions. I want to kind of turn back to both of you and give you one last question. What are you really hoping survivors take away from this, and maybe something you think is sort of a positive step, or what are you hopeful for when it comes to survivors and ending relationship violence?
Well, I mean, I share my story in hopes that even just one woman listening could realize that you can get through it, that there's a life outside of that relationship, the stress and everything that you're living under in it. it's possible. Like this doesn't have to be the end of your story. It certainly wasn't the end of mine. And I never thought that I would leave. Like I truly thought this is it for me for the rest of my life until I hit a point where I was like, okay, I need to get out. But you're able to do it. You're stronger than you think. You have resources. You have people like Human Options, me, this survivors who will rally around you. And you know what? The people who don't believe you, whatever. You know what you've lived, and there's going to be a lot more people than you realize that will support you and believe you, and there's no shame in it. You don't need to be embarrassed. This is somebody else took advantage of your sweetness, your kindness, your loyalty, your willingness to forgive. But you deserve the same in return. You deserve to find a healthy love that is going to show you that same level of kindness and compassion and loyalty too. So it's possible.
Thank you.
So there's been a phrase that's been used for many, many years, no excuse for domestic violence. I like to alter it a little bit and say there's no excuse for abuse. It doesn't matter, if it's actual violent acts or not. And the analogy I give is these victims are in dark rooms. It is pitch black, and they can't find their way around. But there's a door somewhere that's going to get them out of that. And we sometimes need to help them find that door. The important thing is to realize that there's so much help out there. And what I want to try to do, just like Gabby's trying to do, just like you are, Maricela, is provide that empowerment that you're not alone. You're not alone. There are going to be people there that will help you get through this. It is going to be hard. None of this is going to be easy. But there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to help them. We're going to hold their hands. We're going to carry them to the finish line if we need to. And the finish line is more of a starting line to something new, right? And that's what we try to do and paint that picture of we're here to help, but it takes that one call to make a difference. It's either to us, a friend, a parent, a sibling, to take that next step forward.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being here and for having this incredible conversation. It's been an honor to just facilitate this dialogue, and I really appreciate both of you sharing such generously of your experiences and your wisdom. And to all of you, I just really want to appreciate you cannot have a courageous conversation without the right environment. And so thank you all for creating that environment for us, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you.